games will your favorite NFL team win in 2024? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch back with another NFL video. And in this video, my record prediction for all 32 NFL teams for the 2024-2025 NFL season. That's right, going from the worst to first in every NFL division, from the AFC East to the NFC West. I will determine not only what your favorite team's record will be, but also which teams will represent the AFC and the NFC in the playoffs. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe to OwnersBox Fantasy for more NFL content all season long. Let's begin with the AFC East, and we're going to work our way from AFC through NFC, East to West. At the bottom of the AFC East, we have the New England Patriots finishing 4-13. As a member of Patriots Nation, it does not make me happy to say this, but I can always look back at the 6 championships, the 20 years of dynasty, and feel good, right? I can smile about that, but I will not be smiling during the 2024 NFL regular season. Why? Because this is a rookie head coach in Jerod Mayo. This is a rookie quarterback potentially for at least half the season, Drake May. And if Drake May does not get on the field, it's a journeyman quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. So either way, we're not in the best hands. This is certainly no Tom Brady at the quarterback position. What really concerns me about New England is still the combination of a shaky offensive line that I really don't have a ton of faith in, and a receiving core that might have more upside with rookies and young players like Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, but still unproven across the board. You mix that in with a new offensive coordinator, obviously Jerod Mayo trying to take over for Bill Belichick, not only as a head coach, but as the defensive mind of this team. And it just feels like this team it's not going to happen in 2024. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, but it's still a growth season for the Patriots. I think the offense will be more watchable, and I certainly think the defense will still be elite. It just won't lead to a lot of wins. The third best team in the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins will finish 9-8 and miss the playoffs in 2024 after making it in 2023. My main problem with the Dolphins is the line of scrimmage. We know how much talent they have, especially on the perimeter of offense and defense, right? They have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, even Odell Beckham Jr. They brought in Jonnu Smith. They have speedsters in the backfield like Achane and Mostert. They have Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Javon Holland, some big names on the perimeter of offense and defense. But the offensive line and the defensive line is where I'm really concerned about the Dolphins, especially in their own division against these 3 other teams that are arguably really tough on defense. The offensive line is in shambles after losing Connor Williams and Robert Hunt. This team simply cannot rely on a consistent pass blocking unit. They're going to constantly have to scheme around an underwhelming offensive line. Teron Armstead is always injured as well. And then, Tua is not somebody to me that can just carry a team. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he's more of a function of the system of Mike McDaniel. And the defense did lose Christian Wilkins up front, which is an absolute massive loss. They probably won't be getting Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips, their 2 best edge rushers, back till about halfway through the year. So I think the defense could struggle early on. The offense is going to struggle later on when the weather gets rougher. And this schedule down the stretch is absolutely ludicrous. So that's why the Dolphins are 3rd in the AFC East and missing the playoffs. The second best team in the AFC East is the New York Jets. The NFL did a favor to the Jets with this schedule. Not only is there a ton of primetime action for fans, but it's also not the toughest schedule you've ever seen. Aaron Rodgers, I think only has to be a game manager for this team to be successful, right? Zach Wilson and the previous quarterbacks of 2023 were absolute disasters. As long as he can just manage the game, get the offense in the right play, throw an accurate back shoulder pass to Garrett Wilson every once in a while, and maybe a fade ball to Mike Williams, this team will be fine because they can run the football with Breece Hall, who's one of the most explosive running backs in football. The offensive line is improved thanks to Tyron Smith and others, and the defense is absolutely elite. As long as this coaching staff doesn't completely mess things up, I think the Jets will make the playoffs and win double-digit games. And if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, that's also a big asterisk and caveat. But I do have them going 10-7 and claiming a wild card berth. The best team in the AFC East is the Buffalo Bills. Once again, for, I believe, like the 5th year in a row, Josh Allen will win this division. He's the best player in this division. He's the best quarterback in this division. And I don't think it's particularly close. Some people may like Tua. Some people may think Aaron Rodgers is still playing at a high level. But he didn't the last time he was in Green Bay. So I'm just saying Josh Allen is by far the best quarterback here. And he should dictate this division. On top of that, I think that the offense will be more balanced. I think the offensive line is underrated. And I think Joe Brady will do a good job at distributing the football to a plethora of playmakers, including James Cook, a second-year Dalton Kincaid at tight end, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and others. The defense, I think, will be very steady because Sean McDermott always coaches a good defense. And as long as they don't lose half their starters like they did last year, they should still be at least top half in the NFL. And the X factor of the unit to me is potentially getting Von Miller back at a really high level because he came off a major injury last year and was nowhere to be seen. But they still got Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, a really good set of cornerbacks. This team, I think, will win 11 games. They're not as dominant as previous seasons, but still quality on both sides of the ball, and they still have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, 11-6. Moving to the AFC North, the bottom team in this division, I think, is a toss-up between two teams, the Steelers and the Browns. Personally, I think that the Browns are less likely to be the consistent team that makes the playoffs, because I actually see 3 teams in this division making the playoffs, believe it or not. So the Cleveland Browns, I have at 9-8, which is a very difficult decision for me, and I flip-flop on this decision back and forth constantly. But the Cleveland Browns, their defense is phenomenal. They're arguably the best defense in the league, the deepest defense in the league. They've got a great set of cornerbacks led by Denzel Ward, a pass rush led by Myles Garrett. And obviously, I like their coaches. Kevin Stefanski, multi-time coach of the year. Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator. But the quarterback position and the loss of their offensive coordinator and their offensive line coach have me concerned. I am not buying into the Jerry Jeudy hype of him being added to this team and adding another dimension. I do think the offensive line will slightly decline due to the loss of Callahan to the Titans on the offensive line in terms of coaching. And I do think that Nick Chubb is probably not going to be the same player post the major injury, but I'm still hoping he can be that player. I do like Amari Cooper, David Njoku. I just have almost zero faith in Deshaun Watson being a consistent quarterback at this point in his NFL career. He has been borderline terrible since returning to the NFL, and the defense should regress just slightly because they were utterly dominant last year. Plus, this division got stronger, and that speaks to my number 3 team, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are that third-place team because I believe in Mike Tomlin. I love this defense, and I think that George Pickens and Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are enough to get it done on offense. I also believe that the biggest upgrade that potentially any of these teams in this division made from a coaching perspective was Arthur Smith over Matt Canada from a play calling standpoint on this football team. Matt Canada has been like the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL for the last few years. Arthur Smith is a professional offensive coordinator. You might disagree with his tactics as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, remember what he did in Tennessee and even the early years in Atlanta. This guy knows how to run the ball and call plays and play action pass for a guy like Russell Wilson or even Justin Fields if Russ goes down, which also gives me a safety blanket if one of the quarterbacks does get injured. I feel decent about the replacement in this scheme and offense. Russell Wilson knows how to play with a good defense, play with a good running game, protect the football. Not try to do too much. He's very good at that. And with TJ Watt, now Patrick Queen behind him, and Minkah Fitzpatrick at the third level, this defense is going to be utterly dominant. So I have the Steelers going 10-7 despite a very difficult schedule. The number 2 team in the division, I'm taking the Ravens to finish second in the AFC North and not first after a dominant AFC number 1 seeded regular season last year. Lamar Jackson is the MVP, but he's going to have less protection this year. They lost 3 starters on the offensive line. The defense did lose key pieces like Mike McDonald, one of the best defensive coaches in the league. They lost, obviously, Geno Stone and Patrick Queen and Jadeveon Clowney. So they did lose pieces. That being said, I expect a jump from Zay Flowers at wide receiver. I expect Mark Andrews to be a steady presence on the field this year as long as he's healthy. And Derrick Henry should really help the explosiveness of the running game. So the Ravens are still relevant in the playoff picture. I just think they'll take a slight step back on defense. And I think Lamar, probably because of the offensive line, won't play at an MVP level. So they'll still go 11-6, but only as a wild card. And the number 1 team in the AFC North is the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals are back in 2024. Joe Burrow, when he's on the field, is an elite player. They have a dominant receiver duo in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. This is the best offensive line of Joe Burrow's career. I'm not worried about Joe Mixon leaving. I think Chase Brown will step up in a big fashion. Defensively, I think they fixed their safety position. They've got, I think, a lot of cohesion and chemistry up front with a lot of depth as well, led by Trey Hendrickson and Logan Wilson. And I think the Bengals are going to have a dominant regular season with actually the softest schedule of the bunch because they finished last in their division last year. So that really helps them catapult to the top in 2024 at 13-4 and one of the top seeds in the AFC. Moving to the AFC South. The bottom team in the AFC South is the Tennessee Titans going 6-11. The Tennessee Titans, I believe, are just a roller coaster ride in 2024. They don't quite have enough talent on defense to be dominant. I do like their corner position and their secondary. They should be able to cover, but there's also a question about their new defensive coordinator. I do feel like the offense has a lot of receiver talent and weaponry from Tony Pollard and Spears in the backfield to D-Hop and Calvin Ridley at wide receiver along with Tyler Boyd. They've got enough weapons for Will Levis to make this happen, but it's Will Levis, an inconsistent guy. I think he's got a massive arm. He's tough. I love the energy and the aura. But overall, this guy, I just feel like he's going to be great one week. Next week, he's going to drop off the face of the planet. So maybe he's more consistent than I believe. But with a rookie coach and a lot of new pieces in terms of coaching staff and personnel, this is a transition season for Tennessee. I think they only go 6-11, but they build from here. The third team in the AFC South, I have the Indianapolis Colts. Going 7-10, which is probably less than a lot of other people. Like, I think a lot of people are jumping on this Colts train, which is understandable. Anthony Richardson is so intriguing, and the upside is immense. Shane Steichen is a phenomenal coach. But this is a division that I think is a tad stronger than last year. I think the conference is very difficult, and I think their overall schedule is tough. I could see 8-9, maybe 9-8 at best, maybe even 6-11 at worst, somewhere in that range, but I think they'll finish third. The defense already lost a key piece in Samson Ebukam. Their secondary is very suspect. I'm not a Gus Bradley believer overall, and I just think the passing game is going to be a lot more inconsistent than other people believe. I think their running game is going to be phenomenal and a lot of fun to watch with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, but I think Richardson needs time to grow. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains this season as long as he remains on the field, and then there's even questions that he can play a full season, so they don't have a Gardner Minshew type as the backup. I believe it's now Nick Foles. So they don't really have that security blanket in Indianapolis at quarterback. So as much as I like Shane Steichen, and I believe in the upside of Richardson, I just don't think it all comes together in 2024. The second best team in the AFC South, I have Jacksonville finishing second here at 9-8 for the third consecutive season, finishing 9-8, by the way. They could definitely make the playoffs, but I have them finishing just outside the playoff race alongside Cleveland as the 9th seed in the AFC. Trevor Lawrence is a good player, but I think he needs to confirm to us that he can be a great player. He's very talented and he has a chance to carry an offense, but he is still a little erratic in terms of accuracy, reading defenses, overcoming the pressure around him, and making good, consistent decisions with the football. I feel like the offensive line is one of the main elements holding me back. They didn't really improve it in a drastic fashion. Mitch Morse was the only addition, and he's older, and the Bills let him go for a reason. I like Travis Etienne. I like the addition of Brian Thomas, but he's only replacing Calvin Ridley, right? Gabe Davis, I don't think is very good, so I'm not a huge fan of that addition. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk is returning from injury, but it's still a good receiving core. It just needs to be a little bit more than what we've seen previously. And the offensive line, again, being so shaky and inconsistent in both the run and the pass game, has me overall concerned about the consistency of the offense, which with Doug Peterson calling plays and Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, it has a high-end potential. It's just not going to be, I think, consistent. Defensively, I really like the addition of Ryan Nielsen as the defensive coordinator. I think he'll do a great job here, but I do have concerns about the depth at all three levels. I think that they have good young players from front to back. Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker. I like the addition of Eric Armstead, but again, he's somebody that's getting injured a lot lately. Devin Lloyd needs to take a step forward. I like Oluokun. I love Cisco, and I like Campbell a lot. But there's just elements of what if Campbell goes down at corner, or what if Josh Allen goes down. It just feels like they don't have the same level of depth as other teams around them in the AFC, especially on this side of the ball. They do have a very solid defense. I don't think it's an upper echelon unit, though, and I do like the improvements of the pass rush. So they're 9-8. The number one team in the AFC South is the Houston Texans. No doubt about it, not even close, in my opinion. The Houston Texans, 12-5. I think the Houston Texans are going to be a dominant team, and they could compete for the number one seed in the AFC. They are that talented. I love every element of this team, from CJ Stroud as a second-year ascending quarterback who could really win the MVP because he has so much talent around him now, with Stephon Diggs being added as maybe a number 3 receiver, or like at best a number 2, because Nico Collins is an alpha Andre Johnson-like stud. You've got Tank Dell, who's one of the quickest, twitchiest receivers in football. Dalton Schultz is a reliable tight end. Joe Mixon at running back. An offensive line that was the most injured last year that they were able to overcome. Imagine if they're healthy this year, what this offense could be, and the balance that could really come from a healthy offensive line with Joe Mixon running the rock. Slowick is a wicked play caller, I think, from that Shanahan tree. In year 2, he should only get better. I think this offense is going to pass a lot more, which will lead to a lot more points. Defensively, I think DeMeco Ryans always does a great job, but now he has weapons. Danielle Hunter, Al-Shaair, right? These guys are really going to help this defense. Danico Autry, once he comes back from suspension, I think they're going to have a deadly pass rush thanks to their deadly duo of Anderson and Hunter, and then Autry. And then the linebackers are fast and twitchy. And the secondary, I think Stingley's really going to carry this unit as a shutdown corner in 2024. So I think the Texans have every element of being a Super Bowl contender on offense and defense. That's the AFC South. Now for the final division in the AFC West. The number 4 team and the worst team in the AFC, in my opinion, the Denver Broncos, 3-14. I do like Sean Payton, but again, this team does not have any talent to believe that they can win 5, 6, 7 games. Last year, I think they won like 8, but they had some more veteran talent on their team. And they also, they had Russell Wilson. I know people don't think Russell Wilson's any good anymore, but we don't even know if Bo Nix is like a starting caliber quarterback. And the alternatives are Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson. So like really at the quarterback position, they're desperate. Wide receiver, they have next to nothing outside of Cortland Sutton. Maybe Mims can be something. Tight end, they have next to nothing. Running back, they are lacking explosion. Right? Javonte Williams had a terrible year last year. McLaughlin, I'm a fan of. Maybe Estime comes into his own in his rookie season. Defensively, Vance Joseph does a solid job overall, but they just don't have a lot of talent outside of Pat Surtain at corner. They have like a pretty good mix of edge rushers that are young. Benito leading the group. Cooper as well. And defensive linemen, they're veterans, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, but nothing special overall, right? Like from top to bottom, they don't have a defense they can lean on, like let's say a bad team like New England has. They don't really have an upper echelon offense that maybe some other bad teams have that can win them some games. I just don't know how they're going to win games outside of simply out-coaching the other team. So that's why I have them 3-14 as the worst team in the AFC West. The third team, who's actually tied for second, so it's basically a tie for second here, but I have the Las Vegas Raiders at 7-10. I just think they have a little bit less upside than the Los Angeles Chargers. The Raiders, I really like their roster. I'm really held up by the quarterback position. I love the defense. I think the defense could be spectacular and a lot of fun to watch with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins wrecking offensive lines across the NFL. I think Robert Spillane is highly underrated. I think Jack Jones could have a big year. Nate Hobbs is a good player. I think that they do a phenomenal job in terms of game planning week to week, and they could have one of the best pass rushes in football. Malcolm Kuntz, don't forget about him. The offensive line is kind of the X factor because they have some young players, some really good players, Colton Miller, Andre James. Jackson Powers Johnson is intriguing, but overall, I want to see it come together. Brock Bowers, I want to see how they use him in this offense. They have Devontae Adams still. They have Jacoby Myers still, but this is going to be a run-heavy team with Zamir White because they don't have a great quarterback. It's Gardner Minshew or it's Aiden O'Connell. Which one is it going to be? We don't really know. It's a competition right now. I would lean Gardner Minshew early, maybe Aiden O'Connell later. I think because of that, a lot of their games are going to be low scoring. They're going to be, ground and pound, tough, gritty football games that could go either way. And that's going to lead to some that they lose, some that they win, some upsets, but some probably games that they should win and they lose. So the Raiders, I have as a 7-10 team, just not enough belief for me in the quarterback position. The second best team in the AFC West, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers, I just don't think have enough talent around Harbaugh and Herbert to make this happen in year one. I do believe in Justin Herbert. I do think he's a phenomenal talent. I do think Harbaugh wins everywhere he goes. That's a fact. But simply, they don't have great receivers. They let go of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Austin Eckler's no longer there, right? The tight end position isn't even any good, right? Hayden Hurst is their tight end. Ladd McConkey might be their number one receiver as a rookie who wasn't even a first-round pick. Quentin Johnson looks like a bust. Josh Palmer's more of a number 3 than number 2 or a number 1. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt is pretty fun at tackle, but Alt is a rookie, right? And the running backs are nothing special. Greg Roman is a run-heavy guy that's working with a great quarterback that doesn't have any weaponry on the outside. So it's just a weird mix of personnel and scheme and identity. I just don't know how it's going to come together. Defensively, they could be better than I expect because they do have elite talents like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Morgan Fox is underrated. I think that Asante Samuel Jr. is a pretty good player. I think that Derwin James and Gilman at safety are a great combo, but they do have a lot of holes. Corner, defensive line in the inside, linebacker. So a lot of holes on this roster despite some of the elite players and, of course, Justin Herbert. And the best team in the AFC West is obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them going 13-4 here as the flip-flop number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, I have the Bengals as the number 1 seed in the AFC because they beat the Chiefs early in the year. So that, depending on how that game goes, it's probably going to dictate who my number 1 seed is, but I do lean towards the Bengals. Now, that being said, the Chiefs, I think, are still awesome. Now, three-peat is a different story, right? Repeat is doable. It's been done before, although not for a long time since the 03-04 Patriots, right? Three-peat has never happened. So that is the expectation for the Chiefs, is to three-peat, is to get to the Super Bowl, is to get to the dance. Can they do it, or will the wear and tear get to them? Because that is ultimately the question. They have a ton of talent. They improved their receiving core. Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy will definitely help. Rashee Rice, we'll see if he's on the field or not. I think Isaiah Pacheco's in for a huge year. They have a great interior offensive line, probably the best in the league. And Mahomes is the best quarterback in football and the best player in football. Travis Kelce, we'll see how often he brings Taylor Swift to the games, but he is still there. Maybe a little bit declining, but come playoff time and big games, he's going to be great. Defensively, they're still an elite unit, in my opinion, despite losing a couple pieces, including L'Jarius Sneed. They still got Chris Jones. I think that Steve Spagnuolo is one of the best coordinators on defense that has ever existed in pro football history. They have one of the best linebacker depth charts in the league, and Trent McDuffie is an awesome corner who can step up big in 2024. So the Chiefs, they're going to be good on offense, probably better, more consistent on offense this year, maybe slightly worse on defense, but still very, very good. That will make them probably the most complete overall team in the AFC. I just have them going as the second seed, but it's interchangeable. Now moving to the NFC side of things, beginning with the NFC East. At the bottom, we've got the Washington Commanders going 4-13, actually tied with the New York Giants, also going 4-13. And the Washington Commanders first, Jane Daniels is a rookie. Dan Quinn is a rookie to the Commander organization. Cliff Kingsbury was in college football and honestly didn't do a phenomenal job, in my opinion. and comes back to the NFL, and he's been up and down as an offensive coordinator. The offensive line's one of the worst in the league. The running games will be one of the worst in the league. The defense is one of the worst in the league from a personnel standpoint at secondary positions, corner, safety, and also the edge position for the pass rush. I'm not sure how Dan Quinn, who played a lot of man coverage and relied on a four-man rush with guys like Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, is going to make this defense really work at a high level, despite Frankie Louvu, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. They have talent. I just don't know if it's enough for this specific scheme and defense in year one. Offensively, McLaurin, Dotson, they'll have their days and games, and I think Daniels will show some upside, but I just think it will be very hit and miss because of the offensive line and the consistency of finding a rhythm with a rookie quarterback. So that's why I have them as one of the worst teams in the league at 4-13. The New York Giants are a similar story. I just believe more in their coaching, which is why I have them more upside as the number 3 team, because Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll did get to the playoffs one season. It did happen, right? It probably won't happen again, but it did happen once. So that leads me to believe that maybe there's more here than I'm giving them credit for. Malik Neighbors should certainly help the explosiveness of the offense and just the ability to get open against defenses. That's been an issue. But the biggest issue has been offensive line, which I'm not sure has really been solved. Andrew Thomas is an absolute stud, but everyone else is a massive question mark on this offensive line. And really, the receiving core, Wan'Dale Robinson is a fine little, underneath target, but Darren Waller retired, right? Saquon left to free agency through the Eagles. So they don't have a lot of playmakers on offense. It's going to be very scheme-derived and very much reliant on Brian Daboll and the ability to get these receivers open. And if Daniel Jones can show up with his legs as well, that would be helpful. But overall, this team on neither side is really exciting. I think the defense does have a really awesome front seven. Brian Burns being added to the mix, along with, obviously, Dexter Lawrence, the big man, the best nose tackle in the game. And then on the other side, Kayvon Thibodeau. That's fun. Bobby Okereke, also at linebacker, is an absolute dog. But the secondary is going to give them a ton of issues. Kind of similar to me to the Colts, where a really good front seven, very underwhelming secondary, and that could give them issues in the passing game. So overall, the passing game for the Giants is just going to be a huge issue. And they don't have Saquon to bail them out in the run game either. So yeah, I have them 4-13. This might be the final season for Daniel Jones in New York. The number 2 team is the Dallas Cowboys, who I have going 9-8 and missing the playoffs. The Cowboys will have their worst season under Mike McCarthy, in my opinion. They lost pieces on the offensive line, which has been such a key ingredient to Dak's success over the years. When Dak has had time and the ability to rely on a running game and the ability to be protected and work through his reads and find his receivers, he is deadly. He is magical, right? He's borderline MVP quality. But when he does not have those pieces around him, he is not the same guy. And I feel like the run game is going to be extremely inconsistent this year. I feel like the offensive line from a protection standpoint with the 2 tackles that they offer, no more Tyron Smith, right? They already had an issue at right tackle. Now they're relying on Tyler Guyton at left tackle. As a rookie, that's just a problem for me. I like Zach Martin. I like Tyler Smith, right? At the guard positions, dominant duo. But center and the tackles are just an issue, man. Like CeeDee Lamb is phenomenal. Brandon Cooks is still decent. Ferguson's a good, reliable tight end. But they don't have enough on the offensive line to be the elite offense they were last year. And honestly, their defense should also take a step back just because they lost a bunch of key depth pieces. Their linebacker position is still pretty suspect. Their corner position is good. I love Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland. I think their safeties are solid, but they don't have the same depth there. I think the defensive line, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, all these guys, Jonathan Hankins, all these guys that made up the depth of this D-line, they're gone, right? So it's a lot more on Micah Parsons, a lot more on DeMarcus Lawrence. Zimmer comes in for Quinn. I'm not sure if that will be an upgrade or a downgrade, but overall, I just think that the schedule is tougher. The overall theme of this team feels like it's time for them to take a step back before they can take a step forward again. And the winner of the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles at 11-6. The Eagles have so much talent on both sides of the football. Great receiving core. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Now they add Saquon to the backfield. Just imagine the big plays that are going to exist with Jalen Hurts as a passing and running threat, Saquon Barkley, these receivers, an offensive line that's one of the best in football with arguably the best tackle duo in football. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, phenomenal players. Still Lane Johnson playing at an extremely high level. Even without Jason Kelce, they're still going to be able to move the ball. And I'm intrigued by Kellen Moore calling plays. It's definitely an upgrade on paper, How will that come together? I am a little bit concerned about Jalen Hurts as a player. He was seen as really, really great, one of the best, elite last year because of the Super Bowl berth and the Super Bowl performance. But last year, the blitz got to him. Teams really understood how to design game plans to attack him. And it did feel like he was injured. So we'll see how he bounces back in 2024. The defense, I think, is flawed. But with Vic Fangio coming in to fix it, there's few that you would rather have, right? They do have Jalen Carter. I really like the draft picks, Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell. I do feel like Darius Slay can still play. Josh Sweat. I like the signing of Huff as well on the edge. So there's things to be excited about. I just don't think they're the 2022 Eagles defense. Don't expect 70 sacks. Don't expect phenomenal coverage in the back end, right? At least James Bradbury should hopefully be removed from the football field here, but the linebackers are very gross in my opinion, and I still feel like this defense is going to be hit and miss overall. They were so bad last year. It's hard for me to believe they're all of a sudden going to become elite again. So the Eagles will be an up and down, but really talented football team at 11-6. Moving to the NFC North, the worst team, the bottom team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings at 7-10. I love the coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell, love him as a head coach and a play caller. Love Brian Flores. Think he calls a phenomenal defense, blitz happy, but also really creative with his coverages. Love the talent. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Offensive line is talented with one of the best tackle combos in the league. And the defense, I think, is a little underrated in terms of its talent. Like 3 safeties that can play led by Harrison Smith. I think an underrated linebacking core. They added Blake Cashman there to replace Jordan Hicks. I think an edge rotation that's probably a little bit deeper now, despite losing Danielle Hunter. They have Andrew Van Ginkel. They have Dallas Turner, the rookie out of Alabama, and Jonathan Grenard. I think that the defense, Flores will make it work. I'm just concerned about the perimeter, the cornerback position, and obviously I'm really concerned about the quarterback position. It's rather a journeyman Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, a rookie. So either way, I'm not convinced that the quarterback will give them the consistency on offense that they need to have, because the defense, as much as I do like it on paper, it's not elite. It's good, but it's not elite. It can't carry this team. So the Vikings, in probably the toughest division in the NFC by a lot, are going to finish last, but their coaching and the talent will win them some games at 7-10. Third best team in the NFC North, I have the Chicago Bears. Again, this is the best division, in my opinion, in the NFC by a lot. Chicago going 8-9 in this division is pretty successful for a rookie quarterback. And Caleb Williams, he is expected to do a lot this year. And he's going to have a lot of haters, but he's going to be a lot of fun. Now, it's also going to be fun and frustrating because I think he's going to get sacked a lot. I think he's going to throw a lot of interceptions, fumble the ball a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes. But there's also going to be a lot of big plays with the receivers that he has. Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore is one of the best in football. Cole Kmet's a good tight end. DeAndre Swift was brought in at running back. The O-line is decent. I wouldn't call it great. I wouldn't call it bad. I think it's decent. It's growing. It's young, just like their quarterback. And the defense, I think, is a little overrated based on the end of the season last year. But Montez Sweat, good linebackers. Jalen Johnson's one of the best corners in the league. Love Jaquan Brisker. The other underwhelming element here to me is like Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron. They've got a rookie quarterback with like a less than stellar coaching staff. That's why I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs. I think from a talent standpoint, from a high upside standpoint, it exists. From an overall realistic standpoint, it's hard for me to believe that Matt Eberflus with a rookie quarterback is making the playoffs. You understand what I'm saying? So at 8-9, I have the Bears in third place in the NFC North. And the top 2 teams are going to compete for the division and both make the playoffs. The number 2 team in the NFC North, I have the Green Bay Packers at 11-6. I think the Packers will take another step forward with Jordan Love being, once again, a very productive quarterback in year number 2. I think he's going to be more consistent than he was last year. Last year, he started the season very rough. He was trying to figure out the NFL, get his feet wet a little bit. Once it hit end of the season, he was phenomenal. I think you would expect that throughout the entire season. Matt LaFleur is going to have this offense humming with a plethora of targets to throw to. I'd expect a jump from Christian Watson at wide receiver. I would also expect Josh Jacobs to give them a bit of power football in the colder months. And the offensive line should only be better than last year, and it was already great last year. The defense is what I'm really excited about, which will dictate the potential of this team. I think the defensive coordinator change is huge, but I think that Jair Alexander staying healthy is also huge. But I like the pass rush. I like the personnel, and we have for years here. But it has to come together from paper to the field, and I think that comes down to coaching. Can guys like Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Lucas Van Ness hit the field, even Rashawn Gary to a certain standpoint, and reach their absolute potential? They don't have as much depth as I would like from certain areas of the defense, linebacker, safety, things like that. But I think overall the starting unit is very strong to complement an elite offense. This is an elite NFC contender. The number one team in the NFC North is the Lions. They will remain the top cat in the NFC North. And to me, the Lions, they're just excellent at the line of scrimmage on both sides. I think that they won't be ran on thanks to DJ Reader being added to McNeil and Hutchinson up front. They will run the ball on everybody because they have the best offensive line in the league. Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome, and David Montgomery is very steady. They've got a young Sam Laporta, a young Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, Jamison Williams with potential to get better. They've got Amon-Ra, of course, excellent player. You know, they have so many players just entering their prime now. Plus, they fixed their biggest flaw of the secondary. Jared Goff's really good too. Ben Johnson, this is one of the best staffs in football. I love their mentality. I love the way they play. I think the Lions will win 12 games at 12-5 and be the number one team in the NFC North, the number 2 seed in the NFC. In the NFC South, the most confusing division in the NFL, I have the Carolina Panthers once again finishing last, and I don't see that really changing. It might, like they did get better. Let's be fair, they did get better. I think Bryce Young should be better. He can't be worse than last year. The offensive line with Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, that should help, right? Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette at receiver, that should help, right? Brooks at running back, that should help. But new head coach, we don't really know much about in Dave Canales. He's a good quarterback guy, good mentality. I like his persona. He's got a lot of energy to him, but he's very young and very inexperienced. Bryce Young's also very young, and I'm not sure he's any good. Defensively, I think they're potential to be okay, right? Derek Brown and JC Horn are like their elite talents. Everybody else is a steady veteran. I like some of the moves that they made, like Jadeveon Clowney. I do feel like that's a solid move. Josie Jewell was a solid move as well. And then in the secondary, Fuller, I also like that pickup. But they are flawed in terms of the pass rush overall, losing Brian Burns, and the secondary outside of Horn is a little bit underwhelming. So to me, Carolina, just neither side of the ball looks to be elite in 2024, still both growing in a very young movement from the head coach. So Panthers are last. Third team in the NFC South, I have the New Orleans Saints. The Saints, I think, are going to take a dip this year. I think they're going to go 7-10, maybe 6-11, but I have them at 7-10. Derek Carr, to me, I think he just continually gets worse. Like the last couple of years, he had like a great season with the Raiders when they went to the playoffs in 2021. Then from that point, he has just consistently gotten worse as a player. And the offensive line is an area that he's constantly been impacted by. When Derek Carr has a good offensive line, you see peak Derek Carr. When Derek Carr has a bad offensive line, he is bad, like outright bad. This is a bad offensive line. Ryan Ramczak's already going to be missing games. They don't really have a puzzle solved at their tackle position. Alvin Kamara, in my opinion, is borderline washed. And the wide receiver position is basically Chris Olave and nothing really else. So their offense, I think, is really overrated entering the season. The defense, I really still like. Dennis Allen coaches a good defense. They've got a plethora of veterans from Demario Davis to Cameron Jordan to Tyrann Mathieu to bring leadership. But they've also got young studs as well. And some up-and-coming players like Marshawn Lattimore, right? Adebo is really good. And can Lattimore stay healthy, please, right? Willie Gay, I like that pickup. Chase Young, I like that pickup. The defense is still solid, but again, the defense has been good for like 4 or 5 years in a row, and they haven't been able to do anything with it. So the Saints, 7-10. Number 2 team in the NFC South is going to be the sexy pick of the division, which is the Atlanta Falcons. My problem with the Falcons is Kirk Cousins and his injury with the Achilles. I don't know what he's going to be when he comes back. And number 2, the defense on paper is bad. It is bad. They have one of the worst pass rushes in football. They can't sack the quarterback. They can't pressure the quarterback. Right? You're relying on old man Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata to get to the quarterback. That's a problem. Their secondary, Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell are good. Everyone else is kind of replaceable at best, right? Raheem Morris can only do so much in that category, especially Ryan Nielsen is a good coach who we discussed already. And then the offense, yeah, great offensive line. Bijan Robinson, super pumped for, right? Drake London, really good player. Kyle Pitts, maybe overrated, but super talented. Can they get the most out of him? I'm excited for the offense. I think they'll score points. I think they'll be one of the more balanced offenses in the league. But it's just, the defense is just, to me, like, not there. Like, so I'm going with the more balanced team. I have the Falcons at 8-9. I have the Bucs at 8-9, but I have them as the number one team because I think the Bucs are more steady. I think they're more reliable. I think they have less questions. And I think overall, they're more balanced. They have a better defense. They have a steady offense, right? Baker, I know what he's going to be this year. He was very good last year. He was a Pro Bowl quarterback for the NFC, and I know that doesn't really mean anything anymore, but it's still, to me, he had one of his best seasons of his career. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are there. Look out for McMillan, the rookie, as their third receiver. Cade Otton, Rashad White. They've got weaponry. The offensive line should only be better thanks to Graham Barton, the first-round pick at center. Tristan Wirfs is an absolute stud. They need to pay the man. Defensively, they've got a lot of veterans who know how to play in Todd Bowles' system. Levante David, Antoine Winfield, Vita Vea, etc. This defense is reliable, right? They may not be the 2020 Bucs anymore in terms of Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul screaming at the quarterback along with Ndamukong Suh, but there's still a good defense that always stops the run well. Look out for Kalijah Kancey to have a breakout season. I have the Bucs making the playoffs and winning the division for like the fourth year in a row now. So Tampa at 8-9. Moving to the NFC West, our final division and our final set of predictions. The worst team is the Arizona Cardinals at 5-12. The Cardinals, they just don't have a defense. Again, like Atlanta, they don't have a defense. Could they win 6 or 7 games? Potentially. But I just think they're too inconsistent. Kyler is inconsistent in his own right at quarterback, but he has a lot of talent and a lot of upside. He can win games by himself, but there's other games where he's one of the worst quarterbacks that week in the entire NFL because teams know how to, get after him, pressure him, make him frustrated, and he just doesn't play well in certain games. But that being said, I think James Conner in the running game, this offensive line is underrated. I think they're going to run the ball well, along with Kyler's ability to move. That should really help them. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I think is going to be great right away. Trey McBride's going to be one of the best tight ends in football this year. Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch are nice complementary options. So I'm looking forward to the offense. I think it's going to be electric, a lot of fun to watch. Just the defense will not be able to keep up. They have the worst, least talented defense in football, in my opinion. No upper echelon shutdown corner. No great linebacker, no great pass rusher, no great interior defensive lineman. This is not a great defense, and I don't think they can do much about it. So I have them at 5-12 in arguably the best division in the NFC. The third team in the NFC West is going to make the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks at 10-7. The Seattle Seahawks, their defense, I expect to take a huge rise this year under Mike Macdonald. They've got a lot of talent, especially up front with all the guys that they now have together. Boye Mafe on one side, Nwosu returning from injury. They have arguably one of the best interior trios in football. Draymond Jones, Leonard Williams. They drafted the kid out of Texas. He's a stud too. And Jonathan Hankins. He's a really good run defender. Like, ask the Cowboys. When he went down, they were not the same team. I think the linebackers are steady. Julian Love is as steady as it gets at safety. Reek Woolen and my guy, Devin Witherspoon, are going to light up the secondary. Mike Macdonald's the best defensive coach in football. Expect a good defense from Seattle. Expect one of the most fun defenses, fastest defenses, well-calculated defenses in football. You complement that with a great set of weaponry. Like DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, Noah Fant. It doesn't get much better than that, right? And then you've got Geno Smith, who can deal out there. The offensive line is a little suspect. It's the flaw of the team, but I think with a new offensive coaching staff, they have a vision for what they want from this unit. And I would look out for a Geno resurgence this year. I think he's in for a big season. I think the Seahawks are the sleeper of the NFC. At the number 2 team in the NFC West, I've got the Los Angeles Rams, number 2 in the NFC West at 10-7 as well. Stafford and McVay. That's all I have to say. As long as McVay has Stafford, they're going to make the playoffs. I don't care. Aaron Donald, you can retire. I don't care. Okay? Stafford, McVay, you throw in Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and you throw in Cooper Kupp, and you throw in a good offensive line, and probably a very balanced offense that's going to give every defense an issue, and you have a playoff team. The defense, yeah, it's very young. It's very inexperienced. They don't have a lot of studs, but I do think they improved their secondary with some veterans, right? Like Darius Williams, Cameron Curl. I do think that there's some nice players in the front 7, but I am worried. So I think that it is a very offensive-driven team, but I do think that's enough for this team to make the playoffs. And the best team in the NFC and the NFC West, once again, is the San Francisco 49ers at 13-4. Again, a decisive edge in this division. As long as they don't get injured, they should win this division. Brock Purdy, I think, is only going to be better this year because he has a full offseason to work with Kyle Shanahan. That's something he's never had yet in his career. He's very young, but I think he'll grow once again in year 3. Brandon Ayuk's going to be back. Don't worry about it. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, the best plethora of talent at wide receiver in the league. Offensive line could actually be better this year thanks to the cohesion and not losing anybody up front, plus the addition of younger players like Dominic Pooney. And then defensively, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, probably a deeper secondary overall, a deeper linebacking core overall, Leonard Floyd to replace Chase Young, Malik Collins to replace Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave. This team is so complete. It has so much talent. They are Super Bowl or bust, and this might be their final chance to do it. So those are my record predictions for every division from bottom to top, AFC, NFC. If you guys want to see my playoff predictions, make sure to Gronk spike this like button. Don't forget to subscribe to OwnersBox Fantasy for more NFL. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Peace.